It all started on a Tuesday when Anatoly Datlov signed the authorization for an off-scheduled test at Reactor 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The date was April 22, 1986, 4 days before the public catastrophe that would carve itself into world memory. What the official Soviet reports omitted, what the Kurchatov Institute buried under layers of protocol and the ministry's silence, was a parallel experiment that read like a footnote from a different century of physics. Anatoly Datlov was the deputy chief engineer. Viktor Brukhanov was the plant manager. Valery Legasov was a visiting inorganic chemist from Moscow whose private memos later became the only things that smelled faintly of truth. In the spring of 1986, the Soviet atomic community was hungry to outperform, to stabilize reactors at higher outputs. A small, classified team assembled in an undercroft beneath the turbine hall, working with a prototype device described in black ink shorthand as the phase conditioning array, a lattice of capacitors and beryllium conductors wired to what the lead engineer, a Kurchatov physicist named Lev Petrov, called a temporal damping coil. The idea was not science fiction by their lights. Petrov argued they could suppress microfluctuations in neutron flux by modulating quantum phase relationships across the graphite moderator, a delicate therapy for reactors that flirted with instability at low power. The array was improvised from surplus satellite components, a NATO grade of oscillograph smuggled out of a dismantled radar, and a sealed canister of a material they labeled T-86. The KGB stamped the project Operational Stability, Confidential. On that Tuesday evening, a calibration run began. Instruments recorded anomaly after anomaly, neutron counts that softened, then spiked in sequences mathematics could not comfortably explain, dosimeters that measured negative decay for a second or two, the control room clock, watched by night operators, that appeared to lag behind by milliseconds, then to run ahead. Shift workers later told investigators in private that the lights in Pripyat's apartment blocks blinked in a slow rhythm they could almost dance to. A few cleaners reported seeing reflected in puddles on the turbine floor tower cranes and apartment facades that were not yet built. Glass and steel impossible for 1986 Pripyat, as if the city had briefly shown its own outline from 20 years hence. Legasov wrote in a private entry dated April 23 that the array had succeeded in phase-locking localized flux momentarily, but not without an echo. He used the word echo deliberately. Later translators would read it as metaphor, but the operators who survived used it literally. The echo seemed to mean time did not completely return to itself after the array's pulses. Instruments captured a transient field that left behind ionized paths and a faint radio signature at frequencies no Soviet transmitter used, a humming like a throat clearing across an epoch. On April 25 and 26, the plant ran the ill-fated safety tests that culminated in Reactor 4's explosion. The official narrative blames design flaws, operator error, and complacency. Declassified appendices, stamped and then hidden, contain a different pattern, spiraling spectral anomalies recorded in reactor logs that coincide with the phase conditioning array's activations. Testimony from one of the night shift operators,